Welcome to Everyday English with Annie.
So glad to be here.
Okay, so, I want you to imagine standing on a stage, right? You're in front of like 2 billion people,
Oh my gosh. No pressure at all.
right? Live on global television. And you are asked this supposedly simple question: who is the most successful living woman today?
Just a casual question for a couple billion people.
Exactly. So you take a breath, you smile with absolute, just total confidence, and you name a woman who has, who has been dead for years.
Oh, wow. I mean, for most people, a factual gaffe of that magnitude is it's a career-ending humiliation.
Yeah, completely. But for Priyanka Chopra Jonas, it was literally the moment she won Miss World.
It's wild. Because the ability to deliver an entirely incorrect answer with such, flawless, articulate conviction where the judges just buy into your reality, it's honestly a masterclass in the mechanics of communication.
Yeah.
The delivery completely overrode the actual content of what she said.
Which is, that's exactly what makes this specific deep dive so incredibly valuable for you, the listener. Because today's deep dive actually doubles as your English listening practice.
Absolutely.
We are unpacking Priyanka's memoir, Unfinished, and we want to look at how mastering a language, and not just, the vocabulary, but the rhythm, the cadence, the whole cultural context, can literally change the trajectory of your life.
It really can. And, alongside that linguistic journey, we're also tracing this really fascinating psychological one.
Right.
Asking this central kind of haunting question, is success ever enough?
Yeah, that's the big one. Because when you look at her journey from like a nomadic childhood in India to navigating high school in America to conquering both Bollywood and Hollywood, it looks like this super traditional story of just relentless ambition.
It does. But if you look closer at the underlying mechanisms, constantly climbing new mountains often functions as a highly effective strategy for basically running away from yourself.
Wow. Yeah, so let's trace that strategy back to its origin.
Yeah.
She grew up as the daughter of Indian Army doctors, moving every couple of years.
Right. Always packing up, always the new kid.
But the critical rupture happens at age 7. She gets sent away to this strict, cavernous, British-style boarding school called La Martiniere.
Oh, yeah. Which is, the psychological whiplash of going from this highly attentive, really warm home to an institutional dormitory where you are just entirely on your own. That was profoundly traumatic for a 7-year-old.
I can't even imagine. And the coping mechanisms she developed there are, they're just fascinating.
They really are. Consider the environment. You've got a strict hierarchy, absolute rules, zero emotional scaffolding.
Right, like no one to hug you when you cry.
Exactly. So there's this one night she actually threw up in her bed.
Oh, no.
And she didn't call for a nurse. She was so terrified of the institutional consequences of, making a mess that she literally snuck to the bathroom in the middle of the night.
Wait, really?
Yeah. To secretly wash her own vomit-stained sheets in freezing cold water.
At 7 years old, that is just, it breaks your heart.
It does. It shows how much fear was driving her.
She also had this bizarre trick, right, where she would put cut onions under her armpits.
Oh, right, the onion trick.
Yeah, because there was this schoolyard rumor that it would give you a fever. So she was essentially like biohacking an illness just to get an excuse to lie in the infirmary.
Just to get a tiny bit of maternal affection from the school nurse.
Exactly, just a little bit of attention.
Which, when you think about it, both the sheet washing and the onion trick, they're fundamentally about trying to assert control in an environment that has totally stripped you of all agency.
Yeah.
She was learning how to project a false reality, either the reality of being a perfectly clean, rule-abiding student, or the reality of being physically ill, just to manipulate her environment for survival.
Which perfectly sets up the foundational piece of advice her father eventually gave her, because he noticed the toll all of this moving and adapting was taking on her.
He did, yeah.
And he told her to be like water. He explained that, moving meant a clean slate. Whatever mistakes she made in the last town, whatever bad impressions she left, they were just erased.
A clean break.
Right. She could pour herself into a new container and just, take its shape.
Which, from a developmental standpoint, is an incredibly powerful reframe for a kid.
Really? How so?
Well, instead of seeing displacement as a loss of your roots, you start seeing it as this superpower of reinvention. You're no longer a victim of circumstance. You're an active architect of your new persona.
Okay, I hear that. But, and maybe this is just me, isn't that just a super high concept recipe for becoming a chronic people pleaser?
Oh, 100%. It absolutely is.
Because to me, for you listening, it sounds kind of like playing a video game where you just constantly hit the reset button. you know?
Yeah, totally.
Like you spawn in a new town with a new avatar, nobody knows your stats, and you just figure out exactly what the local NPCs want you to be.
That's a great analogy.
But if you are always resetting and taking the shape of whatever container you're poured into, you kind of bypass the necessary friction of figuring out who you actually are.
That is the exact psychological tax of the like water philosophy.
Hmm.
In the short term, adaptability basically guarantees your survival. But in the long term, it creates this void where a core identity should be.
And she didn't realize that void existed.
Not at first, no. Because the strategy worked so well for her up until she hit an environment so hostile that, well, the water simply evaporated.
Ah, right. Which brings us to her teenage years in America. She moves to the U.S. to live with extended family, and she's basically bouncing around, right? Iowa, Queens, Indianapolis, and finally Newton, Massachusetts.
Right. And initially, the adaptability trick works flawlessly.
It does. Like in Iowa, she joins the choir, she gets involved in theater, she even auditions for Fiddler on the Roof. She is just soaking up the culture.
Yeah, she was mirroring the environment,
Mm.
which is exactly what highly adaptable teenagers do.
Mm.
But then she transfers to high school in Newton,
Mm.
and the environment stops mirroring her back.
Yeah. This part was rough. She faced this really specific, unrelenting campaign of racist bullying.
It was brutal. Classmates told her to, go back on the elephant you came on. They called her Brownie. They constantly asked if she smelled like curry. Just horrible stuff.
See, I really struggled to square this part of the memoir because she was this fiercely independent boarding school survivor who learned to fend for herself in freezing water at age 7. She had the ultimate adaptable armor.
Right.
So how does a tough kid like that get completely dismantled by some ignorant high school bullies?
Because confidence is not an innate personality trait that you just, unlock and store in a vault. It's a highly volatile, maintained state.
Meaning you have to keep working at it.
Exactly. Your internal reality is constantly being negotiated with your external environment. And when an environment subjects you to chronic, targeted hostility, it bypasses your intellectual defenses and literally rewires your nervous system. The daily barrage of micro and macro aggressions in Newton didn't just hurt her feelings. It fundamentally rewrote her internal baseline from safety to threat. Her armor didn't fail. It was systematically dismantled.
So her grades plummeted, she couldn't sleep, and she ultimately just fled back to India. It's a stark reminder that sheer willpower cannot always outmuscle a toxic ecosystem, you know?
Definitely not.
But fleeing back to Braille, India, that could have been the moment she shrank permanently.
It could have.
But instead, it triggered the most aggressive reinvention of her entire life.
Oh, completely. She returned with a completely new calculus. Instead of trying to blend into the container, she decided to weaponize her differences.
I love this part.
She leaned into the Americanized walk, the attitude she'd picked up. She started wearing short skirts, projecting this massive, impenetrable, fake-it-till-you-make-it aura.
It actually infuriated her chemistry teacher so much that he physically ripped the hem out of her skirt.
Which is insane. But yeah, this newly constructed, highly visible persona had an unintended consequence at home, too.
Right. Her younger brother, Sid, wanted his bedroom back because Priyanka had taken it over when she came back from the U.S.
Right.
So, employing the purest form of sibling logic, he secretly submitted her photos to the Miss India pageant. He was basically just hoping she would get drafted into the competition and leave the house so he could have his room.
And that prank completely altered her trajectory. Because she actually won Miss India, which forced her onto the global stage for the Miss World 2000 pageant.
Right.
And that required a rapid, intense education in the mechanics of global communication.
Okay, yes. And this is the critical intersection for anyone focused on English listening practice today, because she was paired with a legendary diction coach, Sabira Merchant.
Yes, this is fascinating.
The training wasn't about teaching her English. She was already completely fluent. It was about dismantling the way she delivered the language.
Merchant's methodology was so rigorous, she had to strip away what she called the Yankee twang that Priyanka had absorbed in Massachusetts and Iowa.
Right, getting rid of that American sound.
Yeah. And then she systematically targeted filler words. Every single and like was eliminated.
Which is so hard to do in casual speech.
Oh, incredibly hard. The goal was to build a global English accent, a crisp, highly deliberate cadence that sounds authoritative and polished to a global ear, regardless of the listener's native tongue.
It's kind of like the linguistic equivalent of taking off a casual t-shirt and putting on a custom-tailored suit.
That's a great way to put it.
You are wearing the same material, the same language, but the structure changes how everyone perceives you. But, even with all that rigorous drilling, the sheer scale of the Miss World pageant triggered a massive panic for her.
Oh, absolutely. She was surrounded by contestants who naturally spoke with this incredibly chic, British-sounding Indian English. She felt like an imposter whose tailored suit was just about to rip at the seams.
And that internal panic is what culminated in the question and answer round we talked about at the very beginning.
Right, the Mother Teresa moment.
When asked about the most successful living woman, the stress caused a cognitive misfire, and she named a woman who had passed away. But here is the critical mechanism of why she survived it. The diction coaching held up when her memory failed.
Exactly.
She didn't let the sentence trail off into an awkward, she didn't look at the floor.
Precisely. She utilized the exact pitch control, the measured pacing, and the eradication of filler words she had been taught. She basically built a linguistic fortress around an entirely incorrect fact.
And the judges awarded her the crown. Because human beings are biologically wired to trust the delivery of confidence over the strict accuracy of content.
It's a phenomenal lesson for anyone learning a language.
Hmm.
The way you package your words can often carry way more weight than the actual data inside the package.
So true. So armed with a global title and these elite communication skills, she immediately targets the Indian film industry.
Bollywood.
Bollywood. And again, we see the water work ethic just on overdrive. She commits to 15 to 18-hour shooting days,
That's just once.
churning out 4 massive films a year.
Well, her father had advised her to try it for a year and a half, right? To leave absolutely no what-ifs on the table.
Right. But immersing herself in Bollywood meant confronting entrenched, systemic patriarchal hurdles that no amount of personal confidence could just magically dissolve.
Yeah, you can't outconfidence systemic bias.
Exactly. She details a specific project where the reality of the industry hit her square in the jaw. A producer offered her exactly 10% of what the male lead was making.
10%. That is wild.
Just 10%. And when she pushed back, he explicitly told her that female actors are entirely interchangeable. He basically said, if you don't take the pennies, another girl gladly would.
Ugh. But walking away from that project was a monumental exercise in boundary setting for her.
It really was.
She was utilizing the power of the word no, which is often the hardest vocabulary word for highly ambitious people to deploy.
Definitely. She didn't navigate that era flawlessly, though. I mean, the memoir is very candid about her regrets, particularly her participation in advertisements for skin lightening creams.
Yeah, she owns that.
She admits that she bought into the deeply ingrained colorism of the industry before she realized the immense damage those campaigns do to young girls.
And that admission is crucial, I think, because it highlights the friction of adaptation.
What do you mean?
Well, when you are conditioned to give the environment exactly what it demands to achieve success, like being water, you sometimes compromise your own ethics. Unlearning that compliance and realizing her natural skin tone was actually a strength was a huge step in forming an actual core identity.
That makes a lot of sense. But the shadow side of her relentless ambition was still pulling the strings, right? Because the moment she dominated Bollywood, she didn't pause to enjoy the security.
No, of course not.
She immediately pivoted to the American pop music market.
Right, she partnered with music mogul Jimmy Iovine and the platform Desi Hits. And on paper, it was a massive launch. She even secured the featured artist spot for the NFL Thursday Night Football intro.
With a song called In My City, right?
Yes. But breaking into a completely new cultural ecosystem requires more than just high-level production.
It triggered a devastating cultural immune response. The internet just unleashed a brutal barrage of racist hate mail. Thousands of people demanding to know why a South Asian woman was singing the theme song for American football.
It was awful. But beyond the vitriol, there was a quiet, internal artistic reckoning for her. She listened to the tracks being produced in these elite studios and realized they sounded entirely generic.
Like it wasn't really her.
Exactly. The music lacked authenticity. It was an approximation of what American pop should sound like, but it was devoid of her actual voice. So in a remarkable departure from her usual never-give-up ethos, she simply walked away from the music career.
She just quit.
She quit, and she publicly apologized to the people she felt she had let down.
Which is such a healthy display of course correction. But of course, she didn't stop working.
No.
She immediately pivoted to American television, landing the lead in the thriller series Quantico.
Yes. And this brings our English listening practice theme to its most fascinating point.
I love this part.
Because despite being entirely fluent and speaking with elite diction. She struggled massively on the American set with what she called her global confused accent.
Yeah, because fluency and cultural context are two entirely different operating systems. You can have a perfect grasp of English grammar and vocabulary, but if you don't share the cultural idioms, the language breaks down.
Her examples in the book are hilarious. A director would tell her, let's not die on this hill, meaning, let's not fight over this minor detail.
Right.
And she would literally be looking around wondering who was dying and where the hill was.
Oh my gosh. Or catering would offer her buffalo wings, and her brain would just short circuit because
Yeah.
biologically speaking, a buffalo is a massive mammal without wings.
Exactly. It makes perfect sense if you take it literally. Her experience on the Quantico set perfectly illustrates how language is a living, breathing reflection of culture.
Yeah, idioms are just the shorthand of shared history. When you move to a new country, you aren't just learning words. You're learning the entire associative history of a population.
It's like, well, I mean, that's like trying to use a Mac keyboard on a Windows computer, right? The hardware is in perfect condition, your typing speed is flawless, but every time you hit a shortcut key, the system misfires.
Because the underlying operating system, the cultural context, is fundamentally different.
Exactly. She had to remap her entire linguistic shortcut system while simultaneously leading a major American network television show. It was a Herculean effort of constant, real-time translation.
But when you step back and look at this trajectory, Miss World, Bollywood dominance, American pop music attempt, American network television star, it is exhausting.
Exhausting.
She scales Mount Everest, reaches the summit, and instead of taking a breath to enjoy the view, she immediately pulls out a telescope to look for a bigger mountain on a completely different planet.
That is the absolute definition of a moving target.
Mm-hmm.
And that moving target is the core symptom of using ambition as an avoidance tactic.
Right.
As long as you are climbing, you never have to sit still and evaluate how you actually feel. The momentum is the anesthetic. But that speeding train was violently derailed by a profound personal loss.
Yeah. She lost her father to cancer. And we have to emphasize, he wasn't just a supportive parent. He was the psychological bedrock of her confidence. This was the man who literally attended one of her award ceremonies hooked up to an oxygen cylinder.
Just incredible.
Because he vehemently refused to miss his daughter's moment.
And his death removed the primary witness to her success. Without him, the external validation of the awards and the ratings suddenly rang entirely hollow. It plunged her into an acute, isolating grief.
She describes spending every single free moment outside of her shooting schedule hiding in her bedroom with her rescue dog, Diana.
The adaptable, water-like persona completely froze.
In that frozen state, the avoidance tactic finally became visible to her. She had a profound epiphany. The relentless, do-my-best attitude that made her a global icon was actively sabotaging her internal life.
Right, she was constantly accommodating the demands of producers, fans, schedules. All out of a deep-seated fear that if she wasn't constantly producing value, she wasn't valuable.
She realized she had expertly managed relationships with billions of people, but she had absolutely zero relationship with herself.
To fix that, she instituted a practice that sounds incredibly simple, but is actually agonizing for a chronic overachiever.
Oh, I would struggle with this so much.
Most people would. She forced herself to take 3-4 hours a day to just sit and do absolutely nothing. No scripts, no emails, no linguistic training.
Just being alone with her own unedited thoughts.
That required overriding decades of neurological conditioning. She had to learn that her worth was not tied to her output.
Yeah.
And by enduring the initial discomfort of stillness, she finally stopped running. That rootedness allowed her to finally open up her personal life, eventually marrying Nick Jonas and establishing a physical and emotional home base that wasn't dictated by a call sheet.
Which brings us to the beautiful irony of her entire journey. From childhood, society drills this cliche into us, right? Never give up, quitters never win.
Right.
But Priyanka Chopra Jonas' story heavily underscores the profound, transformative power of quitting.
It really does.
She quit the toxic patriarchal dynamics in certain film projects. She quit an inauthentic music career in America. And ultimately, she quit the compulsive, trauma-informed need to constantly be productive.
Quitting is frequently miscategorized as a failure of endurance.
Yeah.
In reality, strategic quitting is the highest form of course correction.
Yeah.
It's the mechanism by which you reclaim your agency from an environment that no longer serves your core identity.
So let's pull all of these threads together. We've tracked the evolution of a terrified 7-year-old washing sheets in a dark boarding school to a bullied teenager in Massachusetts losing her confidence, to a master communicator using linguistics to build an empire.
Yes.
And today, she uses that highly refined global voice not just for acting, but for advocating for girls' education in India as a UNICEF Goodwill Ambassador.
She has achieved a staggering level of global influence, but she survives it by operating on what she calls the 90-10 rule.
I love this rule.
It's brilliant. She gives 90% of herself to the public, to the cameras, to her philanthropy, to the relentless demands of the world, but she fiercely, uncompromisingly protects the remaining 10%.
That space is just for her.
Exactly. It cannot be bought, negotiated, or consumed by the public.
So, if the finish line of success is truly a mirage that keeps moving further away, the only way to survive the marathon is to ensure you have a sanctuary entirely off the track. So, as you go about the rest of your day, utilizing the language skills you've practiced here, I want you to consider your own internal architecture.
Absolutely.
If you had to define your own 10%, the part of your identity that is completely untouched by your ambitions, your job title, or what the external world demands of you, what exactly would be in that space?